Welcome to the prairies of South Dakota, just north of Badlands National Park. We're at the Minuteman Control Center for the Minuteman missiles, 10 of them in this area, and they now give tours for 6 people at a time. So we're going to take a tour today and hopefully take you along with us.
Here we go. All we need is an open road and a chance to see a never-ending world that's beautiful. Here we go with the sunlight on our skin. It's a brand new day. It's ours to take and we will let it in. This is where the adventure begins.
Between Wall, South Dakota, and the northeastern entrance to Badlands National Park is the Minuteman National Historic Site. As the Cold War escalated in the 1960s, the United States scrambled to keep ahead of the perceived Soviet military threat. Along with strategic bombers and huge ICBMs, it also developed the Minuteman missile. Though smaller and not as destructive as ICBMs, the Minuteman made up for it in numbers, convenience, and eventually accuracy. More than 1,000 Minuteman missiles were installed in shallow launch silos buried throughout the Mountain West and Midwest, including Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, and all the way down to Colorado and Missouri. Today, 400 of these missiles remain active as part of continued nuclear deterrence. Nearly all of the rest were decommissioned and their sites demolished. A few, however, remain as remnants and reminders of another time. We first visited an actual decommissioned silo with an actual missile in the silo, of course with no warhead, just outside of Wall, South Dakota, and north of the northwest entrance to Badlands National Park. Out of the 1,000 Minuteman II missiles deployed in the Prairie States, South Dakota alone had 150 missiles and 15 launch control centers. This covered 13,500 square miles. They remained active for over 30 years until the START Treaty, signed by George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev. Delta-01 was one of those launch centers. Our guide was Lieutenant Steve Willis, who in his 25-year military career served 3 years as a Minuteman Missile Combat Crew Commander at the Missile Control Facility.
This thing right up here is sucking air down to the equipment racks below that we go down and see. That fleet over there is the exhaust. Where it says 106, those big doors, there's a huge filtration system. Do justice to a hospital operating theater, filter out chemical, biological weapons, that sort of thing. Where it says caution right here, that is a diesel generator backup if we lose the power here. There, but they're simply bedrooms and then a hallway. We had an armory up front. When I was here, all weapons had to be up here.
Quick question. So when you say base, that's Ellsworth, right?
Ellsworth.
So all the crew...
Everything is in Ellsworth.
Oh, okay.
So will that furniture eventually be uncovered?
Oh no, yeah. We're waiting for a couple of parts. You know, we're in the day and age now where we're like a third world country. You have to wait for that. Please.
That is the limit.
So how far down are we about to go?
About 3 stories.
Okay.
But the top of the capsule is pretty close to the top of the door. This is Otis Elevator. The sound you're hearing, I heard for 3 years. You can see how deep it is. I'm surprised they let us still do this, because if you put your hand through, you could lose it. And so I keep an eye on the kids. Otis Elevator was responsible for skyscrapers. I think it came out when we still had cowboys. You can see if you put your hand out there, this would be good.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, this is, yeah. Listen to this.
Make an idiot
Hear those?
watches.
This is the final section. Okay. Over here, again, morale art. Two guys down here said the Domino's ad, if it's not there, it's 50.
30 minutes or less.
How much?
30.
30.
Just like the says.
Well, the reason they came up with this is from where you're standing, from this site, the flight time to Moscow is 30 minutes. Again, typical of the way this thing was built, this is a 8-ton blast door. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins. There's 6 on the other side. A 5-year-old can move this with her finger. Right. After that incident, we shimmed it, but we just want to keep it in the same place, but you can move it with your finger. There's no pulleys, no engines, no anything. And just the way they did 99% of the time, stuff they did here, I never had a problem with this thing, ever. Right here is where the pins would go. And there's a place over here, same thing. This is angled, so it can't be blown back. We would put this up and then pump it open or closed, depending on one open, one's closed. There's shock isolators there. There's one set over here. There's one set up front. This is about 30% maybe of this huge capsule, and this would float up this much. And that is the dissipate blast energy. If you look up here, you see up there, I love the bolts. If one bolt's good, 100 are that much better. But do you notice around that? That is welding bead. Look over here, see that weld up there? Yep. Every single inch, top, bottom, underneath, every inch of this concrete coffin is got welding, and that's to dissipate EMP, electromagnetic pulse, to protect your equipment. So we would come down. Originally, when this first opened, it was like a fire station. You would be briefed at about 7 in the morning, and a 15-minute briefing. You would drive out here. Remember, you got to go a long distance on the highway, if you're lucky, and then you got to go off-road, in other words, farm roads. Originally, there were no signs. So they drew me a little map, you know, and they said, when you get to this intersection, you'll know you got the right one because there's a white horse in the right corner. When you get to the right horse, the white horse, make a turn there. And I lived in fear of that horse moving before I figured out what was what. When I got here, this had been going for 15 years, and they had what I thought was an incredibly stupid system. But we would brief at about 1 o'clock. We would drive out here and get here at 3, 4, depending on how far you were going. We would come down and relieve the crew. They would go upstairs and sleep till midnight. They would come down and relieve you. You would go up and sleep till 7 in the morning. And then you would come down and they would leave. Now, they didn't sleep before and they didn't sleep to midnight, and so they're very tired. You're not allowed in this system to sleep here, but you are allowed to lay on the bed and rest. There was some serious resting. There's 2 bicycle locks, one for the deputy, and they belong to the crew. One for the commander, they take them off. We have a briefcase. My deputy has a briefcase, I have one. They have one also. And in it is our tech data. So we come down, we reach in here and make sure we have this. You can see it is top secret Strategic Air Command, and it is also crypto, which is communications. Very, very sensitive, because if you have that, you can read everything. If he says it is not valid, I don't believe that's correct. I can't say I'm a captain, you're a lieutenant, we're doing it this way. We would have to settle it. If he won't launch, we're out of luck. But it only takes 2 capsules out of the 5. If 2 capsules turn keys, they go. So everything is here. We put this back in that my deputy puts on his lock, on his briefcase, I put on mine. Now we're in charge. I am the command. I did show you right here. I mentioned there were 2 keys in there. Here's one for the deputy, and there's one up here for me. And we both have to turn key at the same moment. Here's mine.
Both Soviet and American missile systems had multiple levels of safety built in.
Anytime you are around nuclear weapons, there always has to be 2 people. We were always together. We always had to be within sight of each other, in fact.
This 2-person crew concept established security for the nuclear systems. The crews followed specific checklists. They were highly trained not to fire their missiles, except by order of the president.
The training for both weapon system, maintenance and emergencies, and for emergency war orders was all done out of very clear, well-developed checklists.
We had all kinds of checklists that we would run through.
If you learned the checklists, you knew how to do your job flawlessly.
Launch naval switches. And we'll arm them all. Do you agree? I agree, sir. Arm the left 2. Arm. 3. Arm. 4. Arm.
I never had one. If it's 100% reliability rate, you don't have many no-go missiles. If that happened, they would go out there immediately, night, whatever, and put it back on service, because you launch the missiles. We blow the lid, we blow everything. There's screaming warheads. There's just noise beyond belief. It is just incredible. And we do that every time you go into the trainer. We launch the missiles every time. That ride I was talking about, they give me two, I got 20 missiles. Then they'll tell me to retarget one. If I don't turn this to this missile, I failed the ride. We still have to do it, but it's for naught. So it behooves you to pay attention to all this.
And how much actual control did the crews have over targeting or yield?
Yeah.
None.
We didn't even know what the targets were. Now, it was Russia, that's the only people we're dealing with. But no, it was all, we weren't briefed on what they are. There was no reason for that. Whatever the war plan was, we didn't know what that was. You know, why are they going to fire 2 or are they going to fire 100? Probably more than one war plan. Before I left, they used to have to go out and put the target in. There's 2 targets in the missile. They put a new one in, use the old one, tell time to switch over, go to the new one, then go out and put in the new backup. And it takes forever to get into those things. It was god awful. what they did was they had maintenance open up 10 of them, and the targeting team would go pull up, do their thing, go on to the next one, they'd close this one up, go open another one. Then after the first of the year, they would go back and put the other one in. Then they went to 4, then when I was here, they went to 8. So you could put 8 new ones in, and you would go back and put the 8 back up in. That typewriter was not here. Before I left, they were going to command data buffer, which meant you could target from here. And you go, can we beat that? Which was too bad because last war story, they had the fabled Tinkle rule. The team that put the targets in was usually a young lady, a lieutenant, the targeting officer, and a helper, an airman. And they would do this, and they would be out here 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever, and it would stop at one of the sites, and because she needed to use the facilities. Well, the sites were only for men. There was no women's restroom, but she could use the men's restroom. You know, obviously, just let her use it. But she was supposed to watch that box with her helper. So they would go down to the men's room and put the box under the door,
Right.
and she would watch one end and he would watch the other. Then the head of Strategic Air Command issued the Tinkle rule. And the Tinkle rule was when she would come in the office upstairs, she could leave her box there, and the airman sitting there, and her airman would watch it, and she could
Use the
have
restroom
some
in peace.
Some privacy.
privacy.
Nice.
Well, yes, there's important rules all the time to keep abreast of what's going on.
Yeah.
Now,
Anyway.
how many warheads were on top of each missile? Were they single?
Only one. We were putting 2, 3 on. We had done about 4 of the 6, I believe, when the Cold War ended, and that was the end of multiple warheads. Was the end of it on submarines. They carried 1 billion warheads. They carried a huge number. And same thing with the bombers. That was another thing that was just absolutely stunning. When Bush did the final, Reagan did all of this, but Bush had to finish up.
That was SALT, right?
Assault. And when he did, he said he wanted the bombers off alert 24 hours. They've been there for 20 years, 30 years. I mean, what do we do
60s,
now?
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
this was the end of the world. I mean, you know, and these things he wanted off in 24 hours, saved.
Yep.
And there was about 500 of them on the first iteration, which meant the crew sitting here was pointless, but they had to sit here and make sure nobody took them and they
Right.
were taken care of, that sort of thing. And of course, it was going to be basically years to get all this stuff out of the ground because there's only so many trucks, so many people. You can't just ask somebody to come and take them out. You got to have, and there's only so many of those vehicles. So it was, I mean, I can't think of anything like that. Usually when you have a treaty, it starts at 5 years and, you know, takes 20 years to come to fruition and that sort of thing. It was an hour and a half, and we paid to get rid of everything Russia had. Again, part of the treaty.
Yep.
They get rid of this, we get rid of this. They would come and look at our silos, we'd go look at theirs. Reagan was famous for saying, trust,
But
verify. You know, which only seems, you do that with the butcher, much less the Russians. So, you know. Oh, and if you ever use that for anything, tell them the guy that was talking was Davis Smith.
Okay. Change the names to protect
I don't want to have surprise on my face when it works, but
It's hard to imagine this tranquil, isolated area as ground zero of the Cold War. but it was. We're thankful that deterrence worked, and we in this beautiful part of the country are still here to enjoy. Thanks for watching. We're building our channel and would appreciate you subscribing and liking this episode. See you next time.